Hey everyone, Casey with Mangrove Designs here, and today I'm going to show you how to make a simple spline jig.
Now in this project, our angles are very important. We want to make sure we start square and end square. So we're going to make sure that our table saw blade is at exact 90 for these initial cuts. You can see it's just off by 0.2 degrees there. So we're going to make the adjustment underneath and get us to dead 90 degrees. For our initial rip cuts, we're going to be setting our fence at 8 inches from the blade. Now you can adjust this to suit your needs for your jig, but for today, we're going to be using multiples of 8. I'm going to be using a scrap piece of 3/4 inch ply to set my blade height. So we're going to be using 3/4 inch plywood for this entire project. I'm using 3/4 cherry ply that I had left over from a previous project. Now obviously you don't have to use a hardwood plywood for your particular jig, but that's what I had laying around, so that's what we're going to go ahead and use today. My initial rips here are going to be 8 inches. Like we stated before, that's where we set our fence, so we're going to rip a couple of strips here at that 8-inch width, and then we'll get to the next step of cutting these up to start making our jig. So now we're going to head over to the miter saw, and like we talked about earlier, getting our angles dialed in perfectly on this project is very important. Now there's not a lot of tricky angles. We're dealing with 90s and 45s only, but they got to be dialed in perfectly or the jig isn't going to function properly. So as you can see here, we're adjusting our miter saw and getting it dialed in right to 45 degrees. So now we're going to make a couple of beveled 45-degree cuts here. We're going to cut each end of the board off at 45 degrees. You'll see in a minute why we're doing that, and it's basically because I don't feel like adjusting my blade. Remember earlier we talked about how we're going to do multiples of 8 on this project. So we're going to measure from the long tip of the 45-degree cut. We're going to measure over 8 inches. And we're going to make a straight cut at 90 degrees at that 8-inch mark on both ends of the board. So now we're going to put our miter saw back over to 45 degrees again, and once again we're going to cut both ends of the board off. Once we do that, we're going to measure over 16 inches from the long point of the 45-degree cut. Remember I talked about we're doing multiples of 8, kind of keep things easy here. So we're going to measure over 16 inches back at 90 degrees and make a straight cut right across the board. And so with the remaining piece, we're going to flip that over. Once again, measure over 16 inches from the long tip of the 45-degree cut and make our cut at 16 inches. Okay, so now that we have these pieces cut, we're going to take our first 8-inch piece and we're going to put it on the end of the other board that we ripped, the other 8-inch full-length board that we ran through our table saw. We're going to mark a line on the end, and then we're going to countersink some holes to screw in this piece to our base. Now that we have one end of our jig secured, we're going to take our first 16-inch piece. We're going to put the 45-degree cut on the base, make sure that's lined up flat, and also on the 45-degree cut on the end. And then we're going to scribe a line to find our center point. Now once we've scribed that center point line, we're going to measure from the outside of our jig to the center line, and then we're going to take note of that measurement. I just happened to scribble it right on the jig here because we're not doing anything fancy. We're now going to take that measurement and transfer it to the left side of the jig, and this will be the outside mark of the left-hand side. Once we made that mark, we went over to the miter saw and made a straight 90-degree cut on that line. Came back over, and now we're attaching our other side of our jig. And we're going to check our angles as we go. Like we said, start square, end square, and you can see we've got a nice 90-degree fit. So now that we've got those joints dialed in at 90 degrees, we're going to remove those ends once more. And we're going to apply some glue and then screw the ends back in. Now, these screws will be removed at the end of the project so that they don't interfere with our table saw blade. But right now they're going to act as our clamps until the glue sets. Now that we've got our ends glued and screwed, we're going to take our first 16-inch board. We're going to apply some glue to that top 45-degree cut. And then we're going to take the 16-inch board, we're going to take its 45-degree cut, line it up right on that center point line that we scribed earlier, and then we're going to shoot some brad nails through the top of the edge of the jig. It's very important that this board doesn't slide off that center point scribe line that we marked. So I'm taking my impact drill here that's got a rubberized bottom on the battery so it has a little bit of grip, and putting that right up against the edge of the board so it doesn't slide as we brad nail in the top. Once we do one side, we wash, rinse, repeat, and do the other, and then we're going to check for that perfect 45-degree seam in the center of our jig. From the board that we had cut the base of the jig out of, you should still have some scrap, so we're going to line that up with the back of our jig. We're going to scribe a line on the underside, and then we're going to go back over to the miter saw and make that nice 90-degree straight cut, and then we're going to attach that board to the rear of our jig. So now we've cut that back panel, we're going to come back to our jig and apply some glue to every surface on the rear, and then we're going to attach our board with some brad nails.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Just a quick and easy spline jig that you can do yourself with just scrap 3/4 inch material that you might have hanging around your shop. Now you might be wondering why you didn't get to see the project that I needed this spline jig for. Well, there's a reason for that. It's still a secret, so I can't quite show it yet. Maybe if you hang around to the tail end of the video, maybe you'll get a quick peek. We'll see. You'll have to stay tuned. If you liked the video today, we appreciate your support. Please hit the subscribe button below, hit the little bell for notifications, and like and comment on the post. We really appreciate it. If you're looking for any Mangrove merchandise, such as this t-shirt, the Measure Twice Cut Unk, I'll put a link in the description below to our website. All the Mangrove merchandise there is available, and we appreciate your support. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time.